and thanks to NDI for having us here today. I'm so excited to have this conversation with these two new Congresswomen who were part of the incredible women's wave in the midterm elections that we saw sweep a record number of women into the US Congress. We are still not quite at 50%, but we seem to be inching closer every election, thanks to women like these two, who throw their hats in the ring and take risks to run for office and to be really incredible visionary leaders. So I'm curious to hear from both of you, why run for Congress and why the cycle that you did? What was it that finally made you stand up and say, this is the time, this is the seat?
Well, thank you so much for having me on the panel. Thank you to NDI, to Secretary Albright, to my dear colleague and next door neighbor back in Longworth. I'm happy to be on the panel with you.
Literally next door. I could tap on the wall and say, hey, Abigail.
So I decided to run for Congress for a variety of reasons. I don't know that I had never planned on running for political office. I had always been interested in politics, but the way that I had endeavored to serve in public service was with CIA. Before that, I was a federal agent. And in 2014, I left CIA. I moved back home. I had planned to be just living a relatively normal life in the private sector. I had a lovely job that I really appreciated, and I thought that my involvement would be through community service. I was a Girl Scout leader. I was involved in my community, and I thought that was really the extent of it. And then after the 2016 election, there were two things. It was one, the hyper partisanship that for me I deemed to be unacceptable. The hyper-partisanship that really seemed totally counter to everything I had ever encountered as a CIA officer, where you're working with people, you don't know their party affiliation, you're working for a common mission. That was the first piece of it. And then it was, I perceived that there was a Congress that wasn't focused on solving problems. There was a Congress focused on scoring political points. They weren't using good information. And when I think back to my time with CIA, my whole goal was to collect information that would allow policymakers and our military and diplomats and the president to make good, informed decisions. And so I perceived that there was a significant problem, a lack of people actually asking the right questions. I looked around for who I could support, who would lead in the way that I thought was really important. I didn't see it. And so I decided, I think there's a problem. I think I can be a small part of the solution. And so how can I not do that? So I decided to run. It was not as simple as that, but that's it.
That's awesome. So for me, well, I'll just be perfectly honest with you. There was an open seat in my district, and that does not happen very often. So it coincided with me, I was the chair of the state Democratic Party of New Mexico, and it coincided, my term was up and the seat was open, and so that, that technical part of it seemed to work. But look, I'm a single mom, I'm a Native American woman, I'm a 35th generation New Mexican. I had traveled around organizing an Indian country in my state for close to 20 years. I really felt like I knew what this district and what our state needed. I felt I could be a strong voice. I felt I could speak up for people who had never had somebody speak up for them before. I mean, look, in over 200 years, there had never been a Native American woman in Congress. So to me, that was significant. And this year, as it turned out, was the year, or 2018 was the year of diversity, right? There were people all over the country running for seats, people who had never run before, voices who had never been heard, from school board, up to Congress. So I felt like that was significant. As it turned out, all of my past organizing, my almost 20 years of organizing paid off because I found a tremendous number of volunteers to help me with my campaign. It was very grassroots, and it just turned out that our campaign resonated with the people of District 1. But for me, it was mostly about giving voice to the single moms, to the people who had lived paycheck to paycheck, for the folks who had to piece together health care, because they didn't have a job that gave them health insurance. So it was all those things sort of combined that made me feel like I could be a strong voice for them.
So I love what you pointed out about being a first. And so many of the women who entered this Congress are first in a variety of ways, right? Either kind of along vectors of identity or past jobs. I don't know that we've had other female CIA agents in Congress before. So a lot of groundbreaking women. And I think now the way we talk about that is very celebratory. But I have to imagine that when both of you were thinking about running, there was a little bit of anxiety. Or perhaps an assessment of potential risks. And sort of on theme with today's risk-taking women, what did you see as the risks of running for office, other than the obvious one of losing? And then in your experience of running for office, did that line up with what you feared? Or did you find kind of new barriers and opportunities along the way that were unexpected?
So I ran for lieutenant governor in New Mexico in 2014, so I already had the experience of running for office. Statewide, that was a lot, it was a lot of miles and it was a lot of work. And of course, the first time I ran, 2 months into it, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Because it's scary, right? Everything you say, everything you put on Facebook, everything you do, like people are watching you, and it was very... it was a little nerve-wracking. This time around, I sort of, I guess, got over that initial fear right away. But for the risk in this campaign, and if any of you know about congressional campaigns, is you have to raise a lot of money. It's a high-stakes race. I had 5 opponents against me in the primary, so that meant... that I really had to, raise enough money to get my message out. And so that was really the risk, is that, and really a lot of people took a risk on me, because you're out there trying to persuade people to support me in a primary election when I have 5 candidates running against me. So yes, it's the risk you take, of course, is, your time away from your family, your time away from your home, your time away from your animals, right? Your dogs and the things that rely on you to take care of them. It was a lot of a lot of myself that I wasn't able to share around with my family, my mom who's disabled. It was a risk, but I feel like, you get in a certain way and you just have to keep going, right? I mean, you can't decide this is too much and I don't want to run, because what happens is people, your supporters and people who want to support your campaign, they start relying on you to talk about things and to press forward with things that they care about in their lives. So it's a risk to stay on message. It's a risk to raise the money. It's a risk to just, to put the time that you need toward your campaign, and at the risk of running the best campaign and winning.
For me, the biggest risk was permanently changing the dynamic that I had within my community. And as a CIA officer, I had worked undercover for the entirety of my time with the agency. When I got out, I had my employment declassified, but it was really only my employer, my private sector employer, who knew that I had worked for CIA, and a couple friends, because it had never come up for me to tell people. So it was my privacy, it was changing the dynamic within my community, and win or lose, once you're out there and you're in the public and you're standing in front of people saying, I think I'm the best person to represent you, and this is why, there's so much vulnerability that goes into that, because if people say, no, you're not, I mean, that would be difficult. But you're fundamentally changing your dynamic. And I have 3 daughters. They're now 5, 8, and 10, and I launched the campaign 2 years ago. And so at that point in time, I was putting them in a position where not only was I doing all of these campaign things, but now, I mean, we did 18 television ads. I'm a Democrat. I'm the first Democrat to win in our district in 50 years. So we had, thank you. we had a super uphill, windy battle. And, now I literally can't go out in public without being recognized. Although my one daughter says, if you wear a hat and you wear sunglasses, not as many people recognize you. But you're constantly being judged. You're constantly, people are reacting to you in a very different way. And, I consider myself to be a very normal person. And when people react to me in a way that's more formal than I think is necessary, or that's just different, winning or losing, you change that dynamic. And I think that was a risk. In the end, I think that my ability to serve my community far outweighs the fact that now I'm a little bit different in my community. But that for me was really the biggest risk, is just changing your dynamic and how you live your life and how people view you.
We live in this very intense sort of 24/7 media economy now, between cable news and social media, and everyone is on Twitter, and not only can people see you in your hat and your sunglasses, but they can take a photo and post it on Instagram or tweet it to your followers. And instead of people just complaining about you at their kitchen table, they can tweet directly at you. And I've at least observed a sort of gendered component to that as well, how people talk to women, how people talk about women. And I'm curious how you sort of assessed the risk of running for office and now being an office holder and navigating that space in this particular social media, cable news economy.
So it really impacts every aspect of everything. The fact that people are angry with you on Twitter or on social media, and they say the meanest things on social media. But for me, my primary point of concern really had to do with my kids. And I still, to this day, and I think this will continue, my family makes decisions based on what might get carried on social media. So if we're going to go to dinner and my kids are just a little bit off kilter, I will sit in the car with the kids when my husband will go and take takeout, because we don't want to risk having a 5-year-old act like a 5-year-old in a restaurant and have someone take a picture, and then all of a sudden, I'm the worst representative in the world because I have a 5-year-old who acts like a 5-year-old. And so little things like that, and we've had to have really honest conversations with our kids where, and I think maybe this is more specific because I'm a woman, maybe it wouldn't be the same critique of a man. We've had real honest conversations with our kids about the way you behave or don't behave reflects on mommy. And so if you are really tired, please just be honest about that. If you really don't think you're going to be able to get it together, we would rather you be honest about the fact that, I'm really just going to act like a 5-year-old and act up today. So maybe let's just do pizza and watch a movie rather than go somewhere. And for me, that's, you get attacked on social media all day long, and that can be soul crushing. So you really have to just not pay attention to it. It also can be very comical, actually, if you can find humor in it. But really, in the personal space is where I have found my biggest concerns lie, related to some of the social media, and particularly where it might be more gendered than my male colleagues may experience.
So I'm just thinking about when I go to my local grocery store and people see me in the grocery store and they're like, Deb? And I'm like, yes. If I want to eat, I still have to go shopping, right? I don't know what they think. Like, all of a sudden I have a slew of maids and cooks for me, people that wash my clothes. I mean, no, I'm still washing my own clothes. I'm still ironing my own clothes because I'm too proud to send them to the cleaners. And I still cook, right? Except for it's changed. I make the big pot of spaghetti sauce so I can put it in the freezer and take it out, and that saves me a little time. So the worry about your kids, it doesn't disappear when they turn 25 either. So I'll just let you know that, Abigail. Something to look forward to as you keep winning your seat over and over again. But yeah, I just decided early on that I was going to be myself, right? I remembered a while back when Secretary Clinton went to the UN with a clip in her hair, and that was the freaking headline, right? The most brilliant woman in politics that our country's ever, had gets criticized for having a clip in her hair. And I thought, as you can see, I'm wearing mine today. Because I had softball practice this morning and I didn't have time to do my hair. So I just decided, yes. I decided early on that I was just going to be myself, because then the expectations are real, right? For me, they're not up here. Oh, she always wears high heels, or she's all, I just have to be able to be myself. And if I get up in the morning and I need to put on a pair of flats instead of heels, that's what I do. And I absolutely wear my hair in clips, because when you have long hair, it takes longer to take care of. So I think I try to diffuse a lot of the expectations, and as far as social media goes, posting a lot of things of just, me as myself. With my mom, and I have an apron on, or we're cooking that day, or whatever it is. I just feel like we all need to be more of ourselves, and not a perception of what people think we should be.
It's actually something I love about social media, is that we do get to see, the sort of inside of Congress, and we get to see aspects of your lives as Congresswomen that, in a previous generation, maybe we wouldn't be privy to, which I imagine can also be a source of political support, right? As much as ugliness comes from social media, so does great following. And so I'm curious, during your campaigns and now that you're in office, where did you find support, both personally and electorally? And were there any sources of that support that surprised you?
So when I started the campaign in a district where when I got in the race, it was a strong, safe Republican seat. But I really thought there was an undercurrent in our district of people who wanted something different. And for some, it was politically oriented, party oriented. And for some people, it was just a change in representation, more accessibility. And I think that when you are in a seat that is a tenuous circumstance, like you have the mandate of the people. And so I set out to campaign the way that I wanted to represent, which is by being really accessible. So I did meet and greet after meet and greet. In our primary alone, we did more than 100 in living rooms and dining rooms and Aikido dojos and firehouses across the district, in barns. And I just took questions, and I met people, and I talked to people. And I found that the type of support you can get runs the entire spectrum. People who are strong Democrats and they like you because you're a Democrat, to people who say, you seem nice and I have a connection with you. A couple of our events, on the RSVPs, we would put Curious Republican if they wanted to come into a fundraiser for a reduced price. Magically, a lot of people became Curious Republicans. But the majority of our events were regular meet and greets where you're just saying, please come. And people were telling their neighbors, and their neighbors would say, oh, no, I'm a Republican. I don't think I can come. And you create that space where you say, no, you don't have to vote for her, but you come meet her, come listen to her, come talk to her. But what ends up happening is you get this network of people, and people come to the campaigns for so many different reasons. And what I find really beautiful, particularly about 2018, is people find connections and reasons to support that you can't even begin to understand. I don't know why all of the supporters who supported me, but they all had their own reason. And some of it goes back to Deb's last comment, which is there's a level of realness, I think, when you break the mold of what people think a member of Congress is. I would have people come up to me, and they don't want to talk about policy. They want to say, like, you're a mom, you get it. I have no idea what that meant to them, right? Was that education? Was that healthcare? Was that just the balance of life? I don't know. But people supported me for that reason. Or, across the spectrum, people who said, you talk in a civil way. I support you for that. And then people who agreed with me on policy, which is also very helpful. But it really runs the gamut. But then you get this responsibility, and this is the really amazing thing. You have people who put so much on you, their hopes, their challenges. And actually, over the summer, someone sent to me an obituary. And in the obituary, the man wrote, please, in lieu of flowers, donate to the Boy Scouts. If you want to honor me through service, vote for Abigail Spanberger. Yeah, and I don't know was it the policy, was it the politics, was it something? You don't know. But when you have people who put so much faith in you, it's I think it's a mandate to continue creating links to people across all demographics and groups, and a lot of newer voters, people who wanted to be part of the political system but they didn't know how. Sometimes just walking into a room and saying, you don't need to know everything about this, because people would say, oh, I'm not political, I don't know about that. Well, you don't have to. Ask me a question. I don't know everything, and I'm running for Congress. And frankly, hearing someone say, I don't know everything, can oftentimes get you some votes, because a little bit of humility is a good thing in Washington. Yeah, so it really runs the gamut.
That's awesome. Gosh. Well, as I mentioned, I had been an organizer for quite a long time across the state, so I felt like it was, I'm not going to say easy, nothing's ever easy in this, in a campaign, but I was able to activate a lot of volunteers as a result of the work that I had done on my previous campaign. On other campaigns, I worked for a lot of other candidates in Indian country, getting people registered, getting them to the polls. So I felt like I connected with the LGBTQ community, with the millennials. My daughter's a millennial, so she helped me with that. But I felt like I had already had relationships with labor unions and all those folks, so I was able to activate all those different groups. But really, the way I won was by forming a coalition of all of those people. I won my primary. My closest opponent was 15 points behind me. And the night I won, I got on the radio. There were 2 stations. One a Republican station and one a Democrat station, and they were both males. And I got on the phone, and they were like, are you surprised? Like, they were so shocked that I could win by that much. And I just said, no, I'm not. That's what we expected. So, like a lot of the folks who were in politics, they didn't expect me to win, and I won. So on to the general. I had 2 opponents, and it's a +7 Democratic district, and I won by 23 points. So that means that Republicans voted for me, plain and simple. So my platform apparently resonated with a lot of people I didn't expect it to resonate with. My number 1 issue was the environment. It was fighting climate change and moving our state to a renewable energy economy. And so I feel like, we didn't know if that was the number 1 issue. It was my number 1 issue, so I went with it because I care deeply about leaving a planet to our children and grandchildren. And so I think that the surprise to me were all, the folks on the other side of the aisle who felt like I could represent them also. And I truly take that to heart. I don't take it lightly. I want to be a good representative for every single person in my district and beyond. And so when you win by it's sort of like a mandate like that, you do feel a sense of responsibility, right? To make sure that you are addressing all of the issues that everyone cares about. So that was the surprise.
Fantastic. And I think we're about to get yanked off stage here. But can I just get each of your very short, 1 sentence, best advice you have to anyone who is considering taking the risk of running for office?
I would say to don't delay and volunteer right now. Find a candidate that you like. Volunteer for that candidate, and you can go home and tell your kids and any young people in your life, it's never too young. My daughter was on the doors with me when she was 9, and she has never stopped. So I think you need to volunteer for a candidate and just get involved as much as you can. Learn everything you can. I feel like I've done every single thing in a campaign, even before I ran for office. Yes, and I just real quickly just want to thank NDI so much for having me today. The wonderful, wonderful work that this organization does. It's important to our country. It's important to our entire world, and I just thank you all.
I agree with everything that Deb said, and I would and I would follow up a little bit. If you're inclined to run for office, the best advice I can give is to ask everyone in your network what they think about that, because you'll get really surprising feedback. And I purposely reached out to a number of Republican friends to say, what would you think about this, and give me your feedback. Because in thinking through the process, you have to consider all of the positives and negatives, who you are, how people perceive you, and whether or not you're really the best person. And then when you decide to do it, be absolutely fearless. And if you're not prepared to be fearless, then find a different candidate to support, but you have to be fearless.
Perfect note to end on. Thank you both so much.